Hey guys, Gordon, Cockerpunk, Coonley spec me out of here. Um, I have been thinking about making a series of videos because my goal with the Coonley spec me out of Facebook page was to do a little outreach in terms of getting people into racing, but I don't feel like it's been as successful as, say, my YouTube channel was at getting people into paintball. So I think I'm going to go back to YouTube and do a couple of videos here. So this first one I think is going to be my bits of advice about how to get into amateur car racing. Um, Specifically like pavement racing. I don't know that much about dirt track racing, other than that there's a lot of money involved. I do know a lot about sports car racing, and if you want to do pro racing, you started 15 years ago and are in go-karts. So, that would be my advice there. So if you're like a normal person and you're in your 20s and you like cool cars, and you want to get more involved because car shows are frankly stupid, you want to get into more like real things and the fun parts about cars. So you want to get into an amateur motorsport. So there's a couple of bits of advice I have for this. The first one is, there's a lot of different motorsports, so go and find the one you're most interested in. Road racing is definitely one of the coolest ones, but it's hard to just jump straight into. So I would look into track days, HPDE, time attack, or autocross or rallycross. Or if you live up here, if you're fortunate to have a real winter, and you might be like a car person and be mad that you have a real winter, actually be super excited because ice racing is actually the most fun motorsport there ever was. But more on that later. Anyway, find out what kind of motorsport you're interested in. And my first bit of advice, go to an event and go and talk to the people who do it. All of these crowds are very welcoming people, and they want their niche sport to survive, and so they have a vested interest in being really nice to you and trying to get you involved. And you're coming there as somebody who's interested in their sport, so it should go really well. And a 15-minute conversation with somebody will save you literally, I'm not even kidding, tens of thousands of dollars and multiple years of your life. Because the number of times that people in the car world are like, wow, I'm going to build this Dodge Stealth RT into an autocross car. And they spend tens of thousands of dollars in this build, and then they show up and they realize that they put all the wrong parts on the car. The Dodge Stealth is not the car you should pick, and they get creamed, and then they don't come back. And everybody has a bad time. And best case scenario, you sell this car for like half the money that you put into it, if you are interested in the sport, and when you go and buy the right car for it. So there's a reason why autocrossers love Miatas, right? There's reasons. There's reasons why rallycrossers love Dodge Neons and stuff like that, right? There's reasons why, and oftentimes they're not intuitive. And a bunch of people who are in the, quote, normie car world don't realize that rule politics and things like that are really important in motorsports. And so buying the right car is important. And this is also a secondary thing of don't build your own car, but we can do a whole video on that. Buy a car already built, but that's a whole different question. Go to one of these events and have a couple of conversations with people and talk to them. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you do this? Why did you bring that? Why are you building this car this way? Why are you running these tires? Things like that, because they're almost all related to the rules. And so knowing those rules is really important. And so talking to those people is the first way to get to know how you're going to compete. The second bit is the question of how not competitive are you willing to be? there's a lot of motorsports people or a lot of people who get into motorsports saying, oh, I bought this car, this is a really cool car, I want to go use it, and then they go and they do some track days or some autocross or something like that with it, and then they kind of, after a year or two, kind of realize that they don't have the weapon and that they want to be more competitive, but they've got tens of thousands of dollars wrapped up in this car, and they're kind of in a bit of a crisis as to like, oh shit, what do I do now? Because I got tens of thousands of dollars wrapped up in this car, and it's not the car to have, and I'm not really happy with the fact that I'm not that competitive with it, and so it really pays early on to realize that where you're okay with being competitive. The other example of this is something like road racing, where there's real fucking money, and there's real fucking drivers, and so, coming mid-pack at a national event in a Spec Miata means you're a pretty good wheelman, and you gotta be okay with that. So if you want to join amateur motorsports to win, you picked the wrong sport, because there's not a lot of winners in motorsports. There's a lot of people who do it, and there's a very small number of them are winners. And so if you're gonna stick around, and if you're gonna have a good time, and if it's gonna be money well spent for your own entertainment, you gotta be willing to be entertained by, the fight for sixth or something like that, and defining those goals and what you're interested in is really important. And I think there's a lot of people who actually, will say, oh, I'm fine being here doing this thing back at the back, and they're really not. And so that's something to know going in, because that's where the discontinuity comes from. If you're really honestly fine being a back marker or something like that in the exact car that you want to run or whatever, that's great. Go do that. Be happy. But if you do that for a little while and realize that was not a great decision, save yourself that energy up front and be honest with yourself. Like, no, I kind of want to get good at this, and that means that I need to buy the right car, I need to think the right way, I need to be cognizant of my rule book when I go and modify my car and stuff like that. And so we'll do a whole video on rules later, because rules is somebody could write a fucking book about rules, and people have. And rule books are books. So there's reasons for that. And we can go over those later. But knowing that going in is incredibly important. How far are you willing to go? Because to win, that's what it takes. And it's rare enough to win. So, so those two bits. The third bit would be, don't get too entranced in one motorsport. The motorsport world is very pillared off. Like, I talked to my road racing buddies, and they cannot stand the notion of autocross. And I talk to autocrossers, and they don't even fathom some of the things that we're talking about in road racing. And I talk to my time attack buddies, and they don't realize a bunch of things, and then the drifters are like, well, you should learn the car control from drifting. And I'm like, I do ice racing. And so there's the more motorsports you can do, the better. And so, but what happens is somebody spends 15 years to be a really fucking good autocrosser or something like that, and then they go road race, and they're like, I'm a really good driver, and they don't do that well. And you're like, Gordon, you just literally said the skills from one motorsport translate to another. And I'm like, yes, that's true. But also there are additional skills that come along with every other motorsport. And so what happens is, or like the classic example is road racers going autocrossing. If you haven't seen an autocross course, you're pretty much bad at it. And so you have road racers who come to an autocross, and they'll get just fucking cleaned up. And they'll be like, I thought I was a good driver, and they will not come back. Because they don't know the skills that are involved. They may have good car control skills, but they don't know how to read the course fast enough, for example. Or look ahead properly, because looking ahead is different in road racing versus autocross, for example. But anyway, I'm getting into the minutia. The point is, don't get too embedded in like one motorsport. It's just a crime to me that I see this all the time, that people don't jump out and go and do a different motorsport because they're afraid that they're going to be bad at it. And this goes back to the, like, be okay with not being competitive. Like, learn that that's okay to not be that good at it. Driving is not like running or jumping or something like that. It's a skill. It's like playing violin. Like, yes, the skills translate between cello and violin, but they're different. And so it would be absurd for a violinist to be also a professional cellist unless they spent years working on cello as well. So, be cognizant of this, but don't get too entranced because there's so much more out there to learn, and there's so much awesome stuff that you can do with cars that is cheap and fun, and don't restrict yourself to just one. Finances may restrict you to one or another, but ask around. If somebody's got a seat at a rallycross, just jump in with them. Somebody's got a seat in an autocross, just jump in with them, you know? Or like a WRL or like an endurance racing thing, if you can go and pay for a seat and you have a license, go do it. I should take my own advice on that one. I haven't actually done an endurance race yet, but anyway, I think those are kind of my big bits of advice there is, ask around. Whatever motorsport you are, find a local event, go to it, ask around. Talk to them. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why did you buy the car you bought? Because chances are, no matter how much research you did on the internet, you'll learn something new that may save you thousands of dollars and years of your life. Second one, be honest about how competitive you want to be, and really know that going in. Here's what my budget will allow. Here's what my time will allow, and here is what I define as success. Which may not be winning the race, because as I said, there's not a lot of winners. Like, it's fucking hard to win a race. So, know that going in. And then the third one is, don't get too bogged down in any one motorsport. There's a lot of really cool motorsports out there. And, I just say, if you can run a Miata in it, I'll do it. I'll do any race that a Miata can do. And it turns out you can do everything, and I'm building an off-road one right now to go off-roading. So, just go and drive and enjoy as many motorsports as you can afford to do. Even if it means looking dumb for a little while, because we've all been there. And the only thing that stops people is their pride. So, that's just my advice. If you like this video, I'd love to do a few more, and so drop me a line, comment, like, share, whatever the kids are doing these days. I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.